Welcome to Aging with Dignity. This is a space where we have honest, practical conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Versha, and today we're diving into one of the most important topics in personal finance: end of life financial planning. It's a subject that can feel uncomfortable, but the consequences of not having these conversations early can be overwhelming, especially for the loved ones that are left behind. Today's episode is one that hits close to home. In our family, my dad took care of nearly everything when it came to finances, the bills, the paperwork, insurance, you name it. But my mom quietly held her own ground. She had her own bank accounts and later in life even began managing a few of her own investments. Maybe she figured if her mother back in India could do it back in the 60s, she could probably learn and do it here in Canada too. And she did. But when dad passed away, I saw firsthand what happens when someone passes and the systems that once felt organized suddenly unravel. I inherited not only the responsibility of sorting through his affairs, but also unexpectedly his entire archive of life. He kept everything: old expired policies, letters from India, our report cards and high school diplomas, his certificates from India and Canada. It was tender, overwhelming, and at times very deeply emotional. Some of it brought tears, some of it brought clarity too. But in that sentimental sea of paper, I also discovered something else: chaos. Some of the policies he believed were in that specific drawer he always pointed out, they just weren't there. I remember searching through drawers for a policy dad swore was in there, and it just wasn't. I spent weeks calling companies, looking up old advisors, digging for answers everywhere I could. Even though was generally meticulous, it became clear that in the last few years, 5, 6 years, when his attention was really rightfully focused on caregiving for mom, certain details had just slipped through the cracks. That meant weeks of digging, emailing, calling, searching online for companies as to where his assets may have been held. And this was with a parent who had tried to stay on top of things. It all made me realize that even the most well intentioned families can be left behind with confusion. So today's conversation is about trying to tighten that load up for ourselves and for those who we love. I'm joined by two incredible guests who offer both professional advice, guidance, and deep personal insight into this very often overlooked part of life. Tom Hamilton Piercy has been involved in the financial advisory work for over 20 years. He's going to help us explore issues around retirement, loss, aging, tax, with empathy, strategy, and clarity. Tom brings a wealth of experience in helping people prepare for the inevitable with financial foresight and compassion. Also with us today is Falguni Patel, whose story brings heart and perspective to this topic. Falguni is a first-generation immigrant from India who, like many women in traditional households, devoted her life to caring for her family, her home, her children. When she suddenly lost her husband, very unexpectedly, she was really thrust into an unfamiliar territory. She found herself suddenly responsible for managing finances she had never been involved in. This episode is about empowering you with both the knowledge and the awareness to better support yourself and your loved ones. We're talking about what to plan for, how to talk about it, and how to move from uncertainty to confidence, no matter where you're starting from. So let's begin. Falguni, thank you so much for being here today. Um, I know you're here to share something that's very personal that you've gone through. So I imagine there must have been so much that was going through your mind when your husband passed away several years ago. Not just the grief that you were feeling, but also suddenly having to manage everything in the household, things that you'd never touched before. Um, can you share a little bit about what happened? What put you in a sudden position of having to take care of your children, the finances? What did your world look like after your husband passed away?
Mm. Thank you, for inviting me that I can help someone. That one morning I just woke up and I tried to wake up my husband in the morning, go to work. He couldn't wake up. Then I thought maybe he's joking, and I was just shaking him. And then I just turned him, and then he was still sleeping. So I called my son that something happened to Bob. My son came and he says, "Mom, Bob is no more." And I says, like, "What do you mean no more?" And it's just I was just both of us just freeze, and then all this process that we call family and 911, and it was very hard for all of us. And right there, my life is changed.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. The What was that transition like where you suddenly are found you don't have your husband with you? I mean, after all the mechanics that you needed to go through, you're probably in sort of a auto mode for a while, but raising your children still and suddenly having to manage the household finances, everything. Was that something you were used to doing?
No, that was very hard for me and my children. It was very hard because we don't know nothing about it. So I advise people that you should know in advance something. You should put yourself that to know at least finance and where goes everything and how family, how house runs. You know.
Okay. So you were kind of just all of a sudden you had everything on your lap and you had to try to figure things out,
Yes.
or were you doing things jointly with your husband that you knew were
No, I wasn't doing nothing with my husband like finance or what's happening in the life. Only I take care of the children, work, come home, think about always next day for the what best for my children.
that's not only, by the way. That's a big chunk of a partnership with in a family, right? So we do that. Tom, welcome again. I'm struck by how common this is that when one partner passes away and the surviving spouse is still with us and they're suddenly in the dark. Um, Even with my father, who tried to prepare a lot, I still had to spend weeks piecing together bits and pieces of this. So, from your experience, what are maybe some early steps that can be taken to try and not have that happen, have an easier transition when one or the other spouse passes away?
Yeah, Versha, thanks for having me. Yeah, that 100% the reality. Most people don't plan as much as they should when they're moving in, when they're planning for their own death. And as a result, a lot of people do. They're looking for stuff. It's almost like a treasure hunt, if you want to call it that, where you're looking for insurance policies, bank accounts, investments, deeds, certificates of whatever. So yeah, I mean the easiest thing to do to kind of prepare is when you're still, with us is to think about, oh, I need to plan all of this for the next person who's going to have to look for all of this stuff. So consolidating, putting it all in one place. And when I say it, it literally is all the things you think of that someone will need to deal with. A lot of it is going to be paperwork.
Yeah, it's interesting because you started by saying when we're preparing to pass on. But shouldn't this just be part of our life as partners that we share all of this information at some point? I'm just thinking of Falcone, what you've shared a little bit that you were suddenly found unawares. Would it have been easier? And I'm not saying we all do it, but is there a way like to avoid some of these problems that we sit down earlier? Like even when we don't know that like your husband passed away quite suddenly, wasn't expected. Are there precautions that we can take to help prevent some of these problems that come up?
As a basic pretense, I mean, all of us, death and taxes, right? We all know it's coming and we don't know when. And so we don't need to wait till, we're in our retirement years. Even myself, I'm 48 years old. I'm kind of the cobbler that maybe doesn't have the best shoes, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, I should be looking after things, putting things together, and then having conversations with my wife saying, this is where things are, and effectively preparing the next person who's going to be the executor of your estate.
What is the biggest problem that you've seen when one partner passes away and the surviving spouse doesn't know where the key information is kept?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest problem is people just don't know where the finances are, right? And when it's more acutely when it comes to finances is life insurance policies. Often because we procure life insurance policies well in advance of when we're actually going to pass away. And as such, the documentation is a little bit more buried, so to speak.
Yeah, that was the case with my father. I mean,
Yeah. Right. And, that compounds if you're coming from different countries, right? If you have an insurance policy in India, let's say, but you live here in Canada, yeah, where do I call? I don't even know which banks are available in India as an example, right?
So what does someone do in that case? Because we're talking, most of our followers are first, second, third generation immigrants that probably have assets back in their home country.
You're gonna have to seek advice from a financial advisor in the domiciled countries. That's probably you're going to be your best starting point. Certainly in Quebec, often a lot of this stuff is touched by notaries, right, where we have wills and testaments. But lawyers as well will have some guidance there. Um, you could go to any generic bank, but the reality is you want to be connected with someone that's involved in estate planning and succession planning
In your home country.
in your home country. And often the legal system or the legal advisors will have access to these types of individuals.
Okay. Um, there's a lot to unbundle there. um, Falcone, when you began trying to understand your household influences and looking at all things like the bank accounts that you've got, the investment policies that you've got, bills, what were some of the things that surprised you or confused you specifically? Was there anything that you kind of felt, okay, I'm overwhelmed by all of this. I don't know where to start. Was there just a lack of preparedness? You didn't do this before. Maybe culturally, this was not expected of you. Just wondering if there were any big surprises that you might have come across.
Yeah, it's a big surprise. First thing is account freeze right away. Joint account, when it's a joint account, it's freeze right away. So you don't know what to do. What next?
Okay, doesn't someone have to notify the banks?
Yeah, the bank will need a death certificate to be issued, and they have to go through a little bit of paperwork to kind of ensure that this is an actual thing. And then at that point, the account that's a joint account will be unfrozen such that the other benefactor of the account will then start gaining
But it's
access.
for that takes time, right?
It takes time.
Yeah,
It
it
takes time. It's
doesn't
not turnkey.
happens right away.
Yeah.
So at least takes business 5 days.
Yeah.
Business days, 5 days.
Right.
And I'm just going to give you a little personal example that with my father, I happened to be talking to one of the bank advisors, and I broke down and I said, yeah, my father passed away. And she gave me a big hug. She was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And then I asked something and she said, oh, we have to freeze the account. So they didn't get a death certificate, but she had the knowledge of it and she had to basically freeze it. And then I had legal power. I was also liquidator and legal power of attorney, so that also helped. But you're right, Falguni, it shuts down. So in joint accounts for mom and dad or you and your husband, you suddenly have no access to those accounts. So how did you pay your bills? Or were they just being automatically paid?
Yeah, it's automatically paid, but we have to inform to all the bill goes. So in the bank, we have to inform that stop all the payment automatically stop. But we have like let's say hydro.
Yeah.
Then I have to call to the hydro that these things happen. But they will say then my children they pay by cash one or couple
Oh,
bills.
yeah. Wow. And you don't necessarily have cash because your account has been frozen.
Yes, but somehow we manage.
Yeah, because we have to reach out to friends and family kind of stuff.
Then children they are big enough to know all these things. They figure out. I don't know how they did it, but they figure out. Our family and friends. Yes. Yeah.
It's, you and my mom, were both immigrants to Canada from India. There's some unspoken rules sometimes, maybe some assumptions that are made, and you're a different generation, of course, right, between my mom and you. But coming from a different country, coming to this country, you get busy with your home, your children. Husband typically takes over the finances because the wife typically is raising the children. Was there anything about the Canadian financial system that kind of confused you, or you found really overwhelming when you started, once you found everything was frozen?
Yes, it was. It is confusing that because you are freeze, account freeze at the same time you freeze yourself too. What to do? You don't know what to do, right? Where to start?
So you had to learn so much so quickly. Um, what helped you to start to feel a little bit more confident as you started to go through things?
My children, my son especially, he's very strong, and he was after my husband passed away within a week. He just grew up that I never seen that he can do all these things. And my daughter, she's always very strong, stronger than me. Even she knows what's happening behind the scene. She will cry in her room, but front of me, my both children, that it's like they hold me up.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned your daughter too, because that's what we're talking about, right? The
Yeah.
typical roles. And it's nice to know that yes, your son grew up, became more responsible, stepped up. But your daughter did too. And
Oh,
that's,
my daughter,
yeah, and
yes.
that's a
She's
credit.
very strong girl, even stronger than my son. She broke inside, but in the family, when she sits with us, no one knows that she's broken.
Um, Tom, I have a question for you. When you're starting with from scratch, right? Basically, Falcone's situation where you're also in the middle of grief and all that emotional upheaval. What are some steps that you can maybe suggest that can help structure the start of helping someone overcome that feeling of being overwhelmed?
So one thing I can even suggest, which is not your question, but I'll back it up a pinch, is when you pass away or when you're drafting a will, you have to designate um, the successor or the person who's going to be executor of the will. And often the knee jerk is to designate your spouse or, a trusted relative like your son, your child, or your daughter or whatnot. All of these people are going through grief. And so the knee jerk is, yes, next of kin. This is the person I'm going to have in charge of my estate. Ideally, if you have someone who's close and trusted to the family, but maybe not that close, like maybe a cousin or a nephew or something of that nature, think about that as a potential executor because they actually will lighten the burden because all you're thinking about is grief. And now you have this other thing that's on top.
It's interesting you say that. So, would you give the same recommendation if the children are adult children?
Everyone's grieving. The closer you are to the person who passed away, the more grief you're going to be feeling.
Interesting. Because I was living in England for many years. When I came back to Canada, I sat down with mom and dad. I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about the will. And we went and pulled the will and we were laughing. We were laughing at what was in the will because my dad and mom had created it when my brother was probably 8, 9, something like that, right? So the provisions that were made were for us as children. And one of my uncles was in as the executor. So when my dad and mom redid their will, they put me in as a liquidator executor. So that's really interesting that we never thought to go to somebody else because we're all adults now. But you're right. I mean, that was one of the things that, hey, I'm in the process of grieving for my parents, not the same as grieving for a spouse, but still, you're in grief.
For sure. I mean, the reality is, we're trying to protect the assets, which is why we always go for the next of kin, right? This is how it's the default. But the children, the spouse, they're still going to be involved in those conversations. I think when you designate a liquidator or an executor, other than these people that are very much grieving, you've created an environment where those individuals can now have a conversation with the bank. And because the bank will be, I can't talk to you. That was the situation that I had.
So the bank will talk to the executor.
Yes.
So the executor could be an uncle or a.
And then that person who's a trusted family friend or trusted family member will consult the next of kin, all the benefactors of the will and say, hey, I'm going to do this stuff. Are you okay with that? And they'll be the frame of mind that's just a little bit better. The burden's taken away from the next of kin and they can help facilitate things a lot better. That's the whole concept of liquidator is to facilitate. It's not necessarily to be the benefactor.
Yeah.
Right.
But you've used the word several times in that sentence or a couple of sentences, trust. Someone you trust.
Massive. Yeah, massive. You need trust involved in there. I think one way to even think about it is godparents, right? It's friend of the family or someone close to the family. You're already thinking, oh, how do I designate someone to look after my children? Well, that might be a place to start.
How do you ensure that both the parents and maybe adult children, so the spouses, the adult children know where accounts are held, how finances are structured, what investments they have?
Right.
What's the best way to kind of start that process with knowing who the broker is, who the advisors are? Is there a way that we should be updating and reviewing this on a regular basis, or is it one and done?
Yeah, there's two parts to that kind of question. One would be, how do I take care of my affairs when I'm still here? And then the after the fact, right? So the former is it's as obvious as you would think it is. Put everything in a box, put everything in one place. This would include even as much as logins and passwords if you really want to be mindful of that. We're talking about finances, but quite frankly,
That's very important. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but the password is very important because that's what I went through the first thing when my husband passed away. I came from the hospital and then they asked for the passport.
Mm.
I have to hand up the
the
passport.
passport you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I know where it is, but I don't know. I know the password also, but I don't know how to open
Right.
the safe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about a physical safe.
Yes,
Yeah, I
but
understand.
password also I didn't know.
Yeah.
But my husband told me a couple of
Yeah.
times. I says, why I need? When we go, we always go together, and you take everything out,
That's
you know.
it.
But that's very, very important. But I am lucky that one of my son friend, he did all these things after that we hand up the passport. So you are right, very
Yeah.
important, all the password.
Sorry, we'll come back to you, Tom, but I think, Falcon, you bring up a really good point, right? Because one thing, as soon as somebody passes away, that's one of the pieces of documents that you've got to present is your passport. And like you just said, you would travel together, so why would you ever worry about having
Exactly.
access to
Yeah.
it? So I think that's a really good side point, that one of the documents you should know and have access to for each other and for your family is know where that passport is and be able to access it.
Build on documents, though. I mean, there's things like birth certificate, marriage certificate, deed to the properties that you own. If you're a business owner, you've got all those corporate documents that you now need to be aware of. I mean, all of that, this is finance aside.
Yeah.
These are just things to prove ownership and, that you're actually married to this person. I mean, some of it we take it for granted just because it's been going on forever. But if you had the paperwork up front, those gatekeepers who are custodians of making sure that no one's stealing your money, and the banks and the insurance policies, all of these people need those documentations to make sure that they can get their jobs done properly.
That's very important. I
Yeah.
realize after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that have your documents or passwords and stuff in a box. I'm going to share a little story that really drove it home for me, at least. So, yeah, let's have everything in a box is a great way, or in a safe or something. I came to know of a story where a gentleman passed away. He was in the army, and when the family showed up, there was a binder. Open up the binder, first page. I bank with this bank. This is my bank account number, the branch number, the transit number, the branch manager's name, address, phone number. Turn the page, investments with, tuck, 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 tuck. Turn the page, my life insurance, tuck, 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 tuck. My passwords for these accounts, everything was in there. And I'll tell you, he was an army guy, so he was very structured, but it made me go, oh my God. And then I took it one step further and I said to my brother and sister, I said, with my father having passed and finding little pieces of paper, Dad was very good at keeping things, but he also kept a lot of legacy that should have been thrown away. He also kept things like our report cards and then our certificates and stuff. So a very beautiful sentimental side to Dad that we knew of, but we didn't realize that he was keeping those little pieces of paper. So I was just thinking, okay, now that I'm sorting everything out for my mom and consolidating between them, I've told my brother and sister I'm making a binder. I haven't done it yet, but I'm making a binder, and this is where the binder is, right? Because I don't live at my parents' home. So where would you find that binder to start, even knowing that there's a binder? So I thought that was a little bit more structured than a box. But then the question is, how often do you go and update that? Right? Like your comment about the insurance policy, people take it out 30 years ago, 40
Yeah.
years ago.
Right.
So is
Yeah,
there a
there's-
recommended?
There's a cultural phenomenon, if you will, in Sweden called, I might be messing this up, but it's called death cleaning.
Death cleaning.
So once a year, and it's within the Swedish people, they understand that this is a thing. This is part of their culture. It's not a rule. It's just, this is what we do. And every year there's an understanding that you take inventory of your life in all respects and you clean it. So this could be those knickknacks on those shelves that your kids are going to have to deal with once you've passed away, or that piece of furniture that's kind of sitting in the corner and no one really wants, and you're supposed to get rid of it. Yeah, it's all that kind of stuff. Even clothes, paperwork. I mean, the list goes on. We collect so much over time, right? And so the point I'm making is the cadence, probably once a year, is probably a good cadence.
That's amazing.
And you look at all the paperwork. And the other thing, which we haven't spoken about, but with the world that we're living in today, there's an entire digital footprint that we leave behind as well, right? So your social media accounts, your email accounts, all of these things, they're still there, living, breathing, if you will, post us passing. So having access to those kinds of things and consolidating that kind of stuff is still something to think about as you're preparing.
You've just opened up a whole other side.
Yeah, it's all.
And I'm not a 20-something year, not anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a digital footprint, and if something happens to me, that will.
And I think on that vein, I mean, we were speaking about a physical box, right? A
Yes.
physical binder, which is, listen, for some people that totally makes sense. But
Better than not having anything.
you have a fire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you may want to think about having a digital version of the backup. Take photos, PDFs of all the documents that you have, and now you've got something that's a little bit more robust that can stand the test.
Well, even something as a firebox, though, right?
Yeah, Firebox or a hard drive or a thumb key. So there's a woman that I knew. She used to be a physiotherapist of mine. I think she was 38 or something. She passed away. I don't know how she passed away, but she's a friend of mine on Facebook. She passed away 5, maybe even 10 years ago now, and she's still getting birthday wishes. Can you imagine the family?
Well, if the
seeing that?
family's looking at that, shouldn't they be saying, "Hey, let's shut it down"?
But how, right? That's if you don't have the login passwords. I mean, there's a process to have it shut down. Facebook needs protocols. They need death certificates. I quite frankly don't know the rules, but point simply being is, yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Yeah, so my partner passes away, and I keep getting, because I'm attached to his Facebook,
right.
and I see the happy birthday's going to him. Oh my God, that's horrible.
It's just a reminder, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So,
Tom, one thing that I found really confusing in my dad's situation was life insurance. So figuring out which policies were active, which ones, and who the beneficiaries were. Can we be more intentional about how we prepare that side of things?
yeah, definitely. So, right out of the gates to qualify, I am not an insurance specialist. I know it well enough to kind of, make it sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I'll be honest, I'm not a specialist. So anything I do share, take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, paperwork, diarize, at a minimum, if you're not putting the account number, put the provider.
Okay.
And you can potentially put first name, last name, phone number, email of whomever the specialist was who you were dealing with when you set
Right. If you worked with a broker, if you worked with an individual or
Exactly.
the bank or
Yeah.
whoever you set it up with.
And then the insurance, just as a nuance, right? You have things like term insurance, which would be, a 10-year term. So you've paid premiums for a 10-year period. And then once the 10 years are over, unless you continue to get a renewal, that insurance is expired. So if you bought something in 1985 and it was a 10-year period and in 1995 it's gone, but you still have the paperwork, that may prove to be a bit confusing. And so if you get that every year cadence to kind of clean up your files, that's something that you would want to pull away from that documentation because it's no longer relevant.
Yeah, I like that Swedish model. I think
It's
we're
great.
gonna have to try and
Yeah.
incorporate that. One more thing to do every year,
Yeah.
but it's a good one. It's an
Yeah.
important one.
Routine in most things in life is good. So
Tom, for first generation immigrants that come to Canada, what kind of financial planning challenges would you think that they face that perhaps multi-generational Canadians don't, or take it for granted?
yeah, if there's one thing I've come to realize in my career that it doesn't matter where you're from and what you know, most people are very not educated when it comes to finance in general. So whether it's first generation immigrant or someone who's born and raised in Canada, often once it comes to finances, people start to shut down and we're just not as educated as we could be. So the point I'm making simply is it doesn't matter if you're coming from abroad or if you're local, everyone probably is facing a similar circumstance. So to answer your question, it really is, you would want to have a conversation with proper advisors. The more people you get into the tent, the easier it's going to be for you to plan yourself around different things.
Isn't that interesting though? Because we work so hard for our money
Yeah.
and then we just kind of forget about it. And I assumed that someone who's been born, educated here multiple generations, there's just a system in place to do that. But you're telling me that's not.
No, for the most part, most people are kind of left on their own,
Yeah.
really, unless you are, in the upper wealth kind of category,
Sure.
family office, that kind of stuff. These are people in excess of $10 million kind of
Like,
value.
typically got all the financial people.
Yeah, they've already got a
Yeah.
team assembled for them, but
That's
for the most part, we're all kind of left to our own advices.
Wow.
So yeah,
Falguni, in second and third generation families, adult children might take more of a role in financial planning. That's what I've seen firsthand with me, and my dad and mom were pretty good, but I would step in every now and then. Um, can there be tension between trying to preserve what you perceive to be the traditional roles of man and woman, and then trying to adapt that to the Canadian environment? I'm just thinking, how can children be more supportive of their parents without causing conflict? I don't know if this happened to you at all. I mean, you said your son was there for you. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, I am. I'm just thinking that, if my husband involve my children before, maybe they will know much better what to do. But suddenly, when they have to know something, it was hard. But they did it. My family support was very good too. It's not only my kids, all family members, my husband's side, my side. We were all came out all the different ideas, what to do next, what to do next, and then we came out. But only thing I'm just telling all the parents that involve your children slowly, slowly. What's your finance? How you do your finance depends on the kids. If you know your kids are well understand, then involve them, because it's not like parents don't want to let the children know because they don't want to give them extra burden
A
or
burden.
something. But it's not a burden. Children should know that when something happen like this, at least kids know that what to do next. They don't just get blank. "Oh, okay, now what next?"
I think that's great advice, by the way. I think that of course, it depends on the children,
Yeah.
their personalities. It depends on their capability, their age. I actually think I think we've heard this as well. We should be teaching it in school, and we don't. Right?
Mm.
We don't teach simple budgeting in school, which we should. So it's all age dependent. Um, is there anything, Tom? I'm just thinking that parents should be thinking about if they hold property abroad in their home country. If they're a first generation immigrant, they might hold land or buildings or homes or assets, other assets like investment assets.
Yeah. So if you're thinking in the instance where the parents pass away, what happens to that
Yeah.
property? The entire tax conversation, tax is going to be the biggest thing that you would want to think about properties abroad. And the tax treatment will be dictated a lot by where the asset could be located. And as such, you would probably want to connect with a tax advisor either in Canada that has cross-border skill set, or think about getting a referral or something of that nature in the domiciled country of where the asset is.
Yeah, because if they sell those assets and bring it here, they're all of a sudden facing that tax implication as well.
The bringing in, I'm not 100% sure. Again, I'm not a tax specialist either. It's the selling of the asset part that starts to trigger a capital gain.
And it's a worldwide,
Right.
worldwide holdings. Okay.
It's good to know. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Falcone, it's been about 7 years now since
Yes.
your husband's passed. I know that journey hasn't been easy for you. You've come a long, long way from there. Suddenly thrown into something that you didn't expect to ever have to take care of. Looking back, what are some of the most important things that you've learned about finances, about your independence, or even about yourself? Have you learned anything about yourself as you've gone through the changes last few years?
Yeah, I learned a lot of things that I never thought that I become like this. Before I was just, my husband was doing and everything was perfect. But when overnight is just, everything is changed, my life is changed. But slowly, slowly, my son was always beside me. He's the one who teaching me everything. My daughter always, every day, you have to learn, you have to learn. And I just tell them, okay, you do it, you do it. And then they get angry. No, you have to do it. So I learned a lot of things, all how to pay the bill on a line, or I how to talk when I go to the bank, what to ask, what not to ask. Or if I don't understand, I come back home and I ask my children and we go on. But now I am okay. And then my son, he more always look after my accounts. And if I make a mistake, he says, okay, don't worry, mom, we'll figure out. Always, always he's there. If it's no money or money there, he's always there.
So it sounds like you did a great job raising your children, and now they're there to support you.
Yeah.
They're teaching you, they're training you, and you're standing on your own feet. Right? You're an independent, strong lady living in Montreal on your own, running your home, working, enjoying life. Like you've got the whole package that you've had to learn. Like that you had a different whole package before, and now life happens, right? That's just what we go through.
happens, but support. I have
The support is
good
important.
support from my family
Absolutely.
and good support from my both children. Even until today, if I ask them to if I have to write 10 check for my fees, for my condo fees or something, I tell them, can you write it? Says, no, take 3 days. Write every day, three check, no problem. But you do yourself. So sometimes I don't like it, But then when I finish my work, then I says, no, they are right. I should do it.
You know what it sounds like? It's payback from when you told them, no, tie your own shoes,
Yes.
because that's how you're going to learn, right? Falcone, if you were speaking directly to other women in a similar position that you found yourself in 7 years ago, perhaps that weren't involved with the finances with their husbands, similar split of roles that happens, what advice or warning or encouragement would you offer them?
I I just say them involved in everything. It's not only home, children, or family, but that also important. But at the same time, you involve all your finance or with your talk to your husband, talk to your children, how it goes, your life, how where we are in the life right now. It's not like always. It's not a grass is green, right? So everybody should know
I'm,
what's going on.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit, which is probably not fair, but I'm gonna do it. Your husband passed away 7 years ago.
Mm.
Think back to 10 years ago. Okay. Somebody gave you that advice then and said, make sure you have this in order. You never know. Would you have done something different?
I think so. I know because we think that no, not gonna happen like this. We always think,
Yeah.
but don't think that. Even I'm just
Because we never know.
don't think you never know tomorrow. Yeah, but everybody should do that. We always believe no, no, no. It's never gonna happen like this. Never. But one day somebody have to go. One of us have to go first. Husband or wife. One of have to go.
That's a great point. That someday we have to go. You said it, death and taxes, right? So, yeah, it may not be at whatever age that you're expecting. It might be in your 80s, but one has to go. It's very rare you both go together, but even then, somebody has to take over. Someone has to step in. And Tom, to your point earlier about having the executor and stuff outlined so that you're the person dealing with the grief is especially relevant if both parents go at the same time.
Yeah, but both goes together also same time. That also we have to put in our mind. Okay, husband and me and my husband both together, but we have to think about who's behind,
Exactly.
right? We never think that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find that a lot of people are trying to think about, oh, what happens when my spouse passes away? I should get involved early on and, understand things. The reality is we're kind of all responsible for our own
Yes. I agree.
situation, right? And I mean, whether it's my wife, if I had kids, maybe my kids or whomever is going to have to deal with my estate, it's my estate. And so I think a lot of us it would be better suited to get in the mindset that we need to get our stuff lined up, organize all of our stuff for ourselves such that we don't know who's going to be looking after our estate after the fact necessarily. So,
Yeah, that's why I said before, involve children.
yeah.
After certain age, you should involve the children, how finance goes and everything. So at least they know a little bit idea if both go at the same time, so they know what to do.
I think one of the other things you touched on quickly as well is get other people involved, let them, make aware. The reality is you don't have to tell people how much money you have, how
Yes.
much debt or whatever. You just have to tell them where it is.
Yeah.
I have this policy. You don't even need to know how much it is right now, but it's in this location. That's it. And then once you're in the process, oh, okay, I know where to go. So it's the location of things is probably one of the number one things that you need to organize.
Such a
as
good
person.
point. Such a good point. Because I think that's what people feel like. I don't want to tell my personal stuff. I don't
Right.
want to. Why should I tell my
Yeah.
personal
Yeah,
stuff?
exactly.
Yeah. So just knowing where it is to whoever you trust it. You still have to trust them.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not, sorry, but it's not only in what you have in this country, like in your country, but even back home, whatever you have, that also tell your children or tell your wife or husband and wife, because sometimes, oh, when time comes, she will know. When time comes, he will know.
Yeah, but this assumption that it's going to just by osmosis
Then you go
happen.
back home, and that time you think like, oh my God, what it is? I don't know what to do. Like those things that also very important as an immigrant.
You go when my mother-in-law passed away, we had to go as far as she was a business owner, which is an entire other conversation. But we had to contact Monaris and let them know, oh, there's a death, the business, because she was the sole proprietor, right? So
Who's Monaris?
Monaris is the credit card processing company.
Oh, okay.
We had to call them to let them know, oh, the company is now dissolved. She's no longer with us. I mean, I'm thinking about myself. I've got a Netflix account. that needs to be canceled. I've got Prime, that needs to be like, there's not just the bank accounts and the insurance, it's all the peripherals in our lives. Our cell phone and like all of that needs to be looked after when
Oh,
we
cell
pass.
phone. Yes,
You
I
know,
remember now. Yeah,
it's
that also it
there's
was
so
hard.
much. Yeah.
It was hard that time.
Yeah.
All of the things that we rely on so heavily in life and we take for granted, that just
Yeah.
has to be. So if there was one small step that you would suggest to people listening to get their life prepared, their financial, get their families financially prepared for the future, what would that be?
Number one is just inventorize. Just take stock. Just write things down, whether it's electronically in a binder, however you want to do it. But really think about all the different things. If I were no longer here tomorrow, what needs to be dealt with? This account needs to be closed. This needs to be withdrawn. I need to call this insurance company to make sure that the life insurance payment's paid out. There's pensions that need to be. That's a plethora of things that need to be. Just take inventory. I have this, and it's at that location. You don't even need to write the account number. It's literally Manulife. Here's the guy. That's it.
That's it. They'll figure it out. They'll ask for SID and everything.
Right.
So as my parents aged, they actually started adding me to their accounts. Right? Not as a joint account holder, but before we had the living power of attorney, I'm talking like the Bell or their Netflix account or whatever. I was added to it, and it was done not in preparation for them passing. My dad just couldn't pick up the phone and call them because he was busy taking care of my mom. So Versha, can you take care of just call them and change this? I want a higher speed internet.
Right.
And so you have to be authorized to have that conversation with Bell Canada. So even those little things helped because when they were gone, I was able to right away say, well, I'm on the account. You're authorized to talk to me.
Ease of use. The more you can think about the next person, ease of use to take care of your affairs, that's how you're going to best equip the next generation on it. Yeah.
Thank you both for joining. This has been really insightful. I'm sure our listeners have learned stuff. We've all learned from each other. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful episode. Thank you both.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much
for
having us.
inviting us.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. As we wrap up today's conversation, I'm thinking again about those moments after my dad passed when I was sifting through those folders and drawers, finding everything from insurance documents to old report cards. As I was making my way through it all, it just made me aware of really how important it is to prepare, not just for ourselves, but for those who are going to pick up the pieces one day. Some discoveries, of course, made me smile. Others brought me to tears. And many made me wish we'd just taken a little bit more time while Dad was still here to put it all in order, not just for the sake of the documents, but for the peace of mind it could have brought. Falguni, your honesty, your vulnerability that you shared will no doubt resonate with so many who may be quietly facing similar fears or gaps in knowledge. And I thank you for showing what resilience looks like and for sharing not just your loss, but your learnings and the heartfelt encouragement of others in the same boat to learn and take hold of the reins of it with their partners. And Tom, your insights really showed us that financial preparedness isn't just a technical exercise, it's an act of care. It's a gift to our loved ones and a way to make life just a little more gentler in moments of grief. If you're listening and feeling overwhelmed, just remember, you don't have to do everything today. But maybe you can start with one conversation, one file folder, one login, one list, because the small steps we take now, however imperfect, can make a world of difference later. I remind you to check out the Aging with Dignity Care Toolkit. For this episode, I've included some starter documents for you, and you also have shared links to the various resources that Tom has mentioned through our chat. Everything you've heard today, just real talk. It's just our personal stories, experiences, and honest opinions. This podcast isn't providing legal, medical, financial, or therapeutic advice. And no, listening doesn't make me or my guests your lawyer, doctor, financial advisor, or therapist. The guests and I are here to share stories, spark ideas, and hopefully give you something to think about. When it comes to the big decisions, make sure you do your homework or check in with the experts who know your situation best. We're here to keep the conversation going. You're the one in the driver's seat.